Hey everyone, it's Jessie G here. Welcome back to another episode of Jessie's Hangout. Welcome. This is episode number 4. If you are new to the channel and you happen to come across this episode and you're interested in the type of content that I create for this channel, hit that red subscribe button and that notification bell so you'll be notified as to when I upload videos in the future and you don't miss out on anything. Also, if you wish to stay even more further up to date with me and get more hints about further episodes in the future, follow me on all of my social media. They're listed in the description box below this episode. Go check me out there. Also, please don't forget to pause the video before you start hearing me babble. So you could read the opening credits, any disclaimers, and any trigger warnings, and so on. And you guys are well aware of those before the videos or the episode starts. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. The reason for me choosing to do King Baldwin IV is the fact that he was interesting, not just so the fact that he was young when he died or the fact that he particularly had leprosy and lived for as long as he did. It was the simple fact that he lived with the disease for as long as he did, and he ruled over Jerusalem, and he was a great king. He cared about his people. He cared about ruling over it. It wasn't about wealth, and it really wasn't about power. It was about protecting his people. It was about protecting himself as well, and about protecting his future, because the fact that he had leprosy and was diagnosed with leprosy at the age of 13 years old, maybe younger than that, and he ascended to the throne after his father, King Menachik, or however you say his name, who was born in 1136 and died the 11th of July, 1174. I don't know why I want to say 47. 1174, at the age of 38 years old. I'm assuming he succumbed to whatever disease or whatever illness he had, because during those times illnesses were really great and there wasn't really much you could do when somebody caught an illness or some sort of disease, because the medical field during those times as well really wasn't the best. They weren't as advanced as they are now. We still struggle with various diseases still. Leprosy is known, still to this day. It goes back millions and millions of years ago, but the cases of leprosy are still known to this day. Basically, what leprosy is, it basically affects the nervous system of the body. It also affects other parts of the body, causing the body to slowly decompose, so to speak, and it also could cause a person not to feel anything to a certain extent, where they could lose a limb or a facial, like a nose or a lip or something, because of the fact that it attacks the nerves and because it does what it does. And Baldwin had to not only live with his illness and his disease, he also had to face many other struggles in his life. He did have regents that did help him rule over Jerusalem. There was one particular person he did try to, not so much ask, but consult with about the well-being of Jerusalem, and having him take over certain things, and aiding and helping Baldwin. But because of William of William Longsworth of Manford, I think that's how you say it, which was the first husband that his sister Sibylla, who was the oldest child, she was the eldest. Baldwin was the youngest. She became queen of Jerusalem when Baldwin passed away. He also was the uncle of her son, who she named after her brother, who was known as Baldwin V of Jerusalem. He carried his disease with as much courage and braveness as he could, because he knew that he was slowly dying, and he knew that his disease was affecting him and disfiguring him and making it very complicated to be moving around and to be physically and mentally active in the welfare of Jerusalem. But he did it pretty well. He did it with the best way he knew how to do it, and even though he struggled with that, it also gave him even further complications, such as he couldn't get married, he couldn't have an heir to the throne, so he had to arrange a marriage with his sister, his older sister, who married William. And when she married him, she had the son and heir to Jerusalem. He just really, really struggled with this disease. But the one thing I also want to mention in this one, of how interesting and how much this king, this ruler, this man, this person didn't care so much for his appearance, because even though in the movies it depicted him as wearing a mask because of his leprosy, King Baldwin didn't do much to cover his face from his subjects. He didn't cover his face at all. He didn't really seem to care for his appearance very much. He knew he had a disease. He knew he was slowly dying, and he didn't care about it. All he cared about was the welfare of his sister, the welfare and the future of Jerusalem, the people of Jerusalem, and that's what made him the king that he was, and that's what made him also known for who he was, not just being a leopard king and dealing with the disease for as long as he did, but just for being the kind of person that he was, even though he was slowly dying. And, your mental and physical state are different, but just the fact that he did what he did throughout his reign was just extraordinary, really. He faced off with one of the sultans of that time. He did a battle with Salan, if I'm not mistaken, that was his name. He was the sultan of the Ottoman Empire at that time. He did battle. That was one of the last battles that King Baldwin ever did, was when he faced off with him, and he succeeded in protecting Jerusalem from him. Baldwin had many advisors, many people around him that he tried to trust. I'm not really sure exactly how his court really was, or how the court of Jerusalem particularly really was for kings and queens. Maybe I might dive into that in a different episode sometime, because I find it really interesting for different cultures and how they ruled over their countries, and how their court was like, their laws were like in general. It was just very interesting to know and to learn about, because it's so different from what we know, and from what we know from England. It's just so different. But it's also not unknown for a king or a queen to be ascended to the throne at a very young age either, especially at 13. King Edward of England, who was the son of King Henry VIII, ascended to the throne at a very young age too. Granted, he only ruled over England for 6 years, but he was a boy king, and he was very young when he ruled over England. And he died very young as well. King Baldwin was not so much known for his leprosy, known for having leprosy, which basically affects the nervous system, as I was saying, and also affects the respiratory tract. If I'm saying that right, it can also affect a person's mental health and everything like that as well, of course. But it, like I said, it can basically cause a person to lose a limb or some sort of facial part of the body, or a vital organ even. So not only was he that, he was also a prestigious politician and a successful commander on the battlefield. He definitely succeeded all expectations, and even further from his people, from the people who fought alongside him. and for the people that honestly could respect him for who he was. Sadly, when Baldwin had asked William to take over some responsibilities of ruling over Jerusalem, and he turned it down because he didn't feel like people would support him enough to be regent over Jerusalem. A couple of months or so later of that year, when he asked him, William had passed away, leaving his older sister a widow and pregnant with Baldwin V. And when King Baldwin tried to successfully set things in stone to where William could do that, and even when he asked him, and after that, he didn't really succeed at giving that chance. And when his sister remarried Guy of or however you say it, when she married him, she and him succeeded to the throne of Jerusalem, and then after their passing, Baldwin V of Jerusalem succeeded to the throne, if I'm not mistaken. It was very rough for his sister to have to be put in so many arranged marriages, but he was so worried about his future and the future of Jerusalem and her future that he did what he could do to protect her, to protect him, to protect the people of Jerusalem itself. And he did what he could. And arranged marriages were very difficult for women in those times. They were very difficult for any woman during those times, and it was very difficult for her as well. And it was also difficult losing her brother at the age of 23, 24 years old. The disease just finally overcame him, and he passed away from it. And his time was he was well known for a lot of things. He wasn't talked about as much as most kings because there really wasn't a whole lot about him. You guys saw like 2 pictures that showed up on the screen. Those were the only pictures I could find of him. Although I'm not sure if that's really accurate as to what he looked like because of the disease that he had. Because you know how painters are. They can over-exaggerate things and make people look completely different. But this is from what they had from back in those times. We can all imagine what Baldwin must have looked like because of his disease, and from the pictures that we've seen and the research that people have done. His legacy did live on as long as it did. But to be a young person who survived leprosy for that long and ruled over a kingdom with a disease that was slowly killing him is absolutely... It's crazy. It's I wouldn't necessarily say awesome, because having a disease like that's not that, but it's just really it's really truly astonishing. I don't know if that's the word for it either, but it's pretty crazy to know that he lasted that long, and that the fact that he was a just ruler. He only wanted to, I wouldn't necessarily say he was a just ruler, but he wanted to rule over Jerusalem the right way. He wanted to do right by his people, right by his sister as much as he could. He wanted to do right by the people around him as much as he could. He was a good king. He was a good person, and probably one of the most known kings to be that good of a person and really care about the welfare of his people. I'm sure there was kings and queens in the future who probably felt that way, but for Jerusalem, he was known for that. And, it's just really tragic to know that he had to live life with a disease that slowly was killing him. But even despite all of that, and even despite being forced into things that were probably very difficult for him, because as time went on before his death, he slowly started to get even more disfigured and have more issues. He even had so much of an issue as to going blind in both eyes. He went permanently blind. He couldn't walk anymore. It basically took its toll on him, and he passed away. And he left a big mark in this world, that's for sure. Um, it's really interesting to read about him, and it's pretty sad that there wasn't much about him, other than the great battle that he did and the fact that he was the leper king who survived for as long as he did. Um, I'm not really sure exactly how the court of Jerusalem really was back in those times. It was very different. I'm not really even sure as far as to know as the Ottoman Empire's court system was. I know that they had a harem and all that, but maybe it might be something interesting to go into in the future, but we'll see. I have some other things in plan, but I think we should dive into uh, the Ottoman Empire and more into the kings and queens and the rulers of Jerusalem and how their laws and their courts went. I think that would be very interesting to do. But, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you guys paused and read some of the stuff that popped up that were about King Baldwin and about his disease. Like I said, leprosy is still known to this day, even though it reached back millions of years ago, but it's still known to this day, as well as the plague and everything else. Um, we've come a long way since then, but we still struggle with a lot of diseases and a lot of infections and a lot of other things. So, uh, it's very different. We're a very different time frame than he was, but just the fact that he survived as long as he did and lived with that difficult uh, disease, or in other words, infection, like he did, he was a very, very strong, very brave person. Even though I'm pretty sure at times he was probably scared to death. I don't blame him. Anybody would be scared to have a life-threatening disease that was slowly killing them. I can imagine. Um, there's also one thing that I don't know if I pointed it out, but if I repeat it again, much apologies, but I don't know if I did. The movies depicted him as wearing a mask, like I was saying. The mask that they had depicted him wearing was actual metal one. Um, During the 1700s, when people would have that certain disease, or if they had like syphilis that was affecting them, um, they did use masks and various other devices to go over a nose or an eye, um, for when people lost an eye at a battle or for some sort of disease or something. They would use certain metal things like that. Now, I'm not saying that there might not have been people who had leprosy who did use masks like that, because it was known for that. But Baldwin wasn't really known for hiding his appearance, though. I just wanted to put that out there, but I also wanted to put that other part out there as well, because I found that pretty interesting as well. I mean, they did use other various metals or pieces of wood to deal with whatever limbs or disfigurement they had back in those times as well. So it was very interesting to see him being depicted as a man who wore a mask, but Baldwin really, like I said, he never really cared for his appearance. That was one of the other things. He really didn't care about his vanity much. He cared about his people and his family and who he really needed to worry about. But I'm pretty sure in the back of his mind, um, I'm sure it had to have been pretty scary dealing with a disease like that, or an infection like that, so to speak. But anyways, I hope you guys learned a lot from today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't already, hit that red subscribe button and that notification bell if you are new to the channel. Also, don't forget to follow me on all of my social media, which is always listed in the description box below this episode. Also, don't forget to check out the previous 3 episodes of season 3. Go check those out, and I will catch you guys in my next episode. Later.